The invisible script of the cosmos. There are codes etched into the fabric of the universe, not with ink, not with words, but with energy, with silence, with symbols. Most people walk past these signs every day without ever knowing they were there. They hear the thunder, but never feel the storm in their soul. They feel a shiver down their spine, but brush it off as coincidence. They sense someone's eyes watching them in a crowded room, but ignore the weight behind it. But not Scorpio, never Scorpio, because Scorpio doesn't just see what's there, they see what's beneath what's there. They don't just read faces, they read frequencies. They don't just understand people, they decode them. You see, every Scorpio is born with a spiritual compass buried deep in their soul. A tool that doesn't work in daylight, but only in the pitch-black corridors of the unknown. When most people run from darkness, Scorpio walks straight into it because that's where the messages are. That's where the truth hides. And what if I told you that the universe has been speaking to Scorpio in secret all along, that there are 10 cosmic codes scattered through time: emotion loss, silence, betrayal, passion, and pain that only a Scorpio can truly decipher. These codes don't come in clear form. They come through people who ghost you at your highest. They come through dreams you can't shake for weeks. They come through deja vu that hits so hard it feels like a soul memory from another life. And tonight, we're going to uncover each of them, one by one. You may not even realize how much of this you already know, because as a Scorpio, you don't learn these things from books. You remember them, you feel them, you were born with them. So if you've ever felt like the world speaks a language no one around you understands, if you've ever felt too deep, too intuitive, too intense, too unexplainably awake, then this video was made for you. Because what you've been calling confusion was actually decoding. What others called sensitivity was your soul picking up on a frequency they couldn't hear. Let's begin. Cosmic Code 1, the sacred silence, when the universe speaks without sound. Scorpio doesn't need words to understand someone. In fact, the more someone talks, the more Scorpio listens to what they're not saying, because one of the most sacred codes of the universe isn't spoken, it's silent. There are moments in life, eerie, weightless, almost frozen, when everything around you falls quiet. No text, no reply, no reason. Just a void. To others, it feels like being ignored. To Scorpio, it feels like a spiritual signal, because Scorpio knows something most people don't. The universe speaks loudest when it says nothing at all. You see, when someone goes silent, Scorpio listens even more. When a door slams shut for no reason, they don't panic, they pause. When a job opportunity falls through, or a lover disappears, or a family member changes without explanation, that silence isn't a curse, it's a message. Scorpio understands that silence is not absence, it's presence from a higher realm. It's a pause designed to rewire. It's space given by the universe to Scorpio so they can hear the real conversation, what's happening beneath the surface. Let me tell you a story. There was a Scorpio woman who had just gotten out of a toxic relationship. For months, she tried to explain her side, tried to bring closure, but every time the other person gave her nothing. No answer, no validation, just silence. To anyone else, it might have felt like defeat. But one night, while sitting under the stars in total stillness, something clicked. The silence wasn't about them. It was about her. The universe was saying, stop trying to fill the void. Let the void speak to you. And in that silence, she heard something deeper. She was never meant to go back. She was being protected. She was being realigned. And that's the first cosmic code. Scorpio always knows if it falls silent, it's sacred. Don't chase noise, decode the quiet. Scorpios are wired for the mystical, and silence is one of the oldest mystical languages. In the stillness, they hear ancestral warnings. In the quiet, they hear soul guidance. In the absence of noise, they find the purest truths. Other people fill the silence because they fear it. Scorpio enters it because they know it's where destiny whispers. Life lesson from this code: not everything that disappears is a loss. Not everything that goes quiet is over. Sometimes silence is your soul's invitation to listen harder, to decode what no one else can. Scorpio, when the world goes mute, don't be afraid. That's your language. That's your sign. Cosmic Code 2. The repeating pattern, the soul's way of demanding growth. Scorpios don't believe in coincidence, because by the time most people notice a pattern, Scorpio has already traced it back 5 emotional lifetimes. There's a code in the universe that hides inside repetition, and Scorpio was born to crack it. When a Scorpio finds themselves falling into the same kind of relationship, a friend that betrays, a lover who manipulates, a boss who undervalues, they don't just say, "Why does this keep happening to me?" They ask, "What's the code inside this pattern trying to teach me?" You see, the universe is patient, but it's also persistent. If you don't get the lesson in one form, it will dress it in a different body with a new name, a new smile, but the same trigger, over and over, until you either self-destruct or wake up. And Scorpio, they wake up. Eventually, not because they're naive, but because they trust too deeply, because they want to believe the best in what feels intense and magnetic. But here's where the code turns. Once a Scorpio sees the pattern, they never unsee it. And when they do, they burn it to ash. Let me tell you a real story. A Scorpio man kept attracting emotionally unavailable women. At first, he thought it was just bad luck. But by the 3rd heartbreak, he started seeing the blueprint. Each woman mirrored something in him: a fear of intimacy, a fear of vulnerability, a wound from childhood. And that's the cosmic twist. The people weren't the code. He was. He was the common denominator, not in blame, but in energy. So he went inward. He faced what he was avoiding. He healed what he never dared name. And when the pattern tried to return, he no longer matched its frequency. The lesson was complete. The code cracked. Why only Scorpio sees this? Because Scorpio has the gift of emotional X-ray vision. They don't just feel the pain, they interrogate it. They don't just suffer through cycles, they break them. Other signs get stuck asking, "Why me?" Scorpio evolves into asking, "What now?" Life lesson from this code: the universe doesn't punish, it repeats. Until your soul recognizes the test, until your energy stops feeding the old. And Scorpio, once you awaken to the pattern, you become the breaker of chains, not just for yourself, but for your entire bloodline. Because that's what a true Scorpio does. They don't just heal themselves, they end ancient contracts. They rewrite the story. Cosmic Code 3, the eyes are codes. And Scorpio reads them all. There's a saying, the eyes are the windows to the soul. But for Scorpio, the eyes aren't just windows, they're encrypted portals. While others get distracted by smiles, compliments, or clever lies, Scorpio locks onto the eyes, because that's where the energy hides, that's where the mask slips. Most people can fake words, some can even fake emotions, but almost no one can fake their eyes. Scorpio knows that. That's why even in a crowded room, they'll know who's watching with envy, who's masking pain, who's lying without saying a word. Scorpio doesn't need proof. They've already felt the frequency change in your stare. And that's what makes them dangerous. Let me tell you a moment I'll never forget. A Scorpio woman walked into a job interview. Everyone smiled at her. Everyone was friendly. But there was one man across the table who barely said a word, just observed. And when she met his eyes, she saw something strange. It wasn't interest. It wasn't judgment. It was calculation. She couldn't explain it, but her body tensed. Her soul whispered, "Don't trust him." Weeks later, she got the job. and she discovered this man had sabotaged the last woman in that position. No proof, no confession, but a history of quiet poison. And in that moment, she realized her soul had read it all in a glance. Why Scorpio cracks this code? Because Scorpio's energy lives in the unseen. They don't trust easily, but once they sense something in your eyes, it's done. They may not confront you, but they'll never see you the same again. That's the quiet gift of Scorpio. They don't just read people, they register truth that hasn't even been spoken yet. To others, that's spooky. To Scorpio, that's survival. Life lesson from this code: your energy speaks louder than your words, and someone like Scorpio is always listening. In a world obsessed with saying the right thing, Scorpio is watching for what's real. Your body language, your tone, your hesitation, but above all, your eyes. So if a Scorpio ever looks at you a little too long, don't ask them what they see, because the truth is, they already know. And if they're silent, it means they saw more than you wanted them to. Cosmic code for soul memory. When Scorpio remembers what hasn't happened yet. Have you ever felt like something was going to happen and then it did? Have you ever met someone new but felt like you've known them for lifetimes? That's not just intuition, that's a soul memory. And Scorpio was born fluent in it. See, most people think memory only works backwards, that we only remember the past, but Scorpio knows better. They've felt the future before it arrives. They've dreamed of moments long before they happen. They've cried over losses before they even occur. Because deep inside the Scorpio soul is a spiritual map drawn not with logic, but with vibration. This is not fantasy, it's a code and it's real. Let me share a story. A Scorpio woman once sat at a dinner table surrounded by laughter and friends. But halfway through the night, she felt her chest tighten. No one had said anything wrong. The mood was light, but something inside whispered, "This is the last time." She didn't understand why until 2 weeks later, when one of the people at that table unexpectedly passed away. No illness, no warning, just gone. And in that moment, her feeling that night made perfect sense. She hadn't predicted the future with her mind. Her soul remembered it. That's the fourth cosmic code. Scorpio has access to a kind of internal memory that moves outside of time. They recognize energies before events unfold. They know when a cycle is ending, even if everything on the outside seems perfect. And they often carry the burden of knowing before others catch up. Why only Scorpio feels this? Because Scorpio isn't just emotionally deep, they're spiritually attuned. When most signs rely on facts, Scorpio trusts their pulse. When others doubt, Scorpio remembers, even when they can't explain it. And yes, this gift often isolates them. People say they're dramatic, too suspicious, too sensitive. But that's because the world doesn't understand how heavy it is to carry premonitions, to feel what others won't feel for months, to know and still act normal. Life lesson from this code. Not all wisdom comes from what you've lived. Some comes from what your soul already knows. And when your inner world warns you, don't gaslight yourself, you're not imagining it. You're not crazy. You're just ahead of time. Scorpio, your soul doesn't lie. Even if no one else understands the message, trust it anyway. Because your memory isn't broken, it's just multidimensional. Cosmic Code 5. The energy behind the words. When Scorpio hears the soul, not the sentence, people lie. They flatter. They fake apologies. They say things just to fill the silence or protect their image. But Scorpio hears something beneath the words. They don't just listen to what you say. They listen to the energy that follows your words like a shadow. And that's the fifth cosmic code. Energy doesn't lie, and Scorpio knows how to listen to it. Let me explain. Someone can say, "I'm fine," but Scorpio hears the storm in their voice. Someone says, "I love you," but Scorpio feels the emptiness wrapped in those syllables. Someone says, "You can trust me," but Scorpio feels the shift in vibration, the hesitation, the crack in the frequency, because every word we speak leaves behind an energy trail. And Scorpio doesn't follow the sentence, they follow the trail. I once knew a Scorpio man who was in a business partnership. Everything looked right on paper. The contracts were clear. His partner seemed charming, supportive, strategic. But during one meeting, that partner casually said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of that." And something in the way he said it made the Scorpio pause. Not the words, but the intention behind them. It wasn't confidence. It was possession. It was subtle manipulation. The Scorpio didn't confront it immediately. He waited, watched. And within a month, he uncovered financial mismanagement that would have destroyed everything. He ended the partnership and later told me it was in his tone, not his plan. Why this code belongs to Scorpio? Because Scorpio has vibrational intelligence. They read tone. They feel intention. They pick up the emotional temperature of a room faster than most people pick up the Wi-Fi signal. It's not paranoia, it's not overthinking. It's their soul's built-in defense system. Because when Scorpio loves, they love all in. So they've learned to read early to sense betrayal before it has time to unfold. Life lesson from this code: not all truth is spoken out loud. Some truth leaks through energy, through voice, through silence. And if you're Scorpio or walking with one, know this. They may not call you out, but they've already clocked the shift. They've already filed away your frequency, and they'll adjust their trust accordingly. So speak with your soul, not just your mouth. Because, Scorpio, they're listening with something much deeper than ears. Cosmic Code 6. The Awakener. When certain souls enter only to trigger your transformation. Some people come into your life like a storm. Sudden. Magnetic. Unforgettable. They ignite every nerve. They awaken parts of you you didn't know existed. They touch your soul without ever really touching your skin. And then they vanish. And while others see heartbreak, Scorpio sees the code. Because Scorpio knows, not every soul is meant to stay. Some are sent to trigger the transformation your soul signed up for long before this lifetime. There's a term in spiritual psychology called a catalyst soul, someone whose only mission in your life is to activate your inner death and rebirth. They bring the pain, but also the push. They often cause chaos, but also awaken your highest timeline. And Scorpio, the sign ruled by Pluto, the planet of transformation, knows this better than anyone. Let me tell you about a woman named Arya. She was a Scorpio, strong-guarded, wise beyond her years. Then came him. He wasn't her type, but the connection instant, soul level, unexplainable. Within 3 months, she was opening up like never before, laughing, trusting, hoping. But just as quickly, it all unraveled. He disappeared. No closure, no explanation. She shattered. But instead of drowning in grief, she did what Scorpios do best. She went inward, into the ashes, into the truth. And she realized he came to show her where her walls were too thick, where her wounds were still bleeding, where her heart had been locked away in fear. He came not to love her gently, but to rip off the mask she had grown too comfortable wearing. He was never the soulmate. He was the awakener. Why this code is so deeply Scorpio? Because Scorpio is the sign of rebirth. They don't fear endings. They expect them. Not because they're pessimistic, but because they know the soul grows fastest through rupture. Scorpio is wired to feel deeper. So when an awakener enters their life, the shift is not emotional, it's existential. And though the world sees heartbreak, Scorpio sees initiation. Life lesson from this code. Not all love is meant to last. Some love is meant to awaken. And sometimes the ones who hurt us most are the ones who cracked open the path to our healing, to our shadow, to our truth. So if you're Scorpio or have walked this path, forgive the trigger, thank the awakener, because without them you'd still be sleeping in a version of yourself that was never meant to survive. Cosmic Code 7, Death as a Doorway. When Scorpio understands the sacred purpose of endings. Most people fear endings. They see them as failure, loss, destruction. But Scorpio sees something different. They don't see endings as death. They see them as initiations. Because deep inside every Scorpio soul is a code that says to evolve something must first die. It could be a belief, an identity, a relationship, a version of yourself. But something must burn, so something new can rise. This is why Scorpio is the zodiac's alchemist. While other signs cling to what's fading, Scorpio lets it collapse. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because they know true transformation is never tidy. Sometimes it begins with a betrayal. Sometimes it looks like your life falling apart. But underneath the chaos is clarity. And underneath the loss is liberation. Let me tell you about Jonah, a Scorpio who worked his whole life to become a surgeon. He sacrificed, studied, said no to love, no to rest, no to himself, just to make the dream real. And he did. But in his 3rd year of residency, a tragic mistake happened. He wasn't at fault, but the shame buried him. He lost his license, his identity shattered. To everyone around him, it looked like his life was over. But to Jonah, after months in darkness, he realized something. He never wanted to be a surgeon. He wanted to heal. And that healing didn't have to come from scalpels. It could come from energy, from trauma therapy, from guiding others through the same inner death he had survived. He became one of the most respected trauma coaches in the country, but it would have never happened if the old version of him hadn't died. Why Scorpio owns this code? Because Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the god of death transformation and the underworld. They are not afraid to descend. They know that death of ego, of attachments, of illusions is not the end. It's the only way to the truth. That's why Scorpio walks through the fire that others run from, because they don't just survive endings, they emerge from them renewed. Life lesson from this code. Don't fear the death of what no longer fits you, because the moment something collapses, a job, a friendship, a false dream, is the moment your soul makes room for what's real. Scorpio teaches us that death isn't the enemy, it's the first step toward rebirth. So if you're standing at the edge of something crumbling, remember, you are not breaking down, you are breaking through. And Scorpio, you were born to walk through that doorway and come out glowing. Cosmic Code 8, the dream portal, when the universe sends Scorpio messages while they sleep. For most people, dreams are just strange stories, flickers of memory, random emotion, flashes of color. But for Scorpio, dreams are transmissions. They're not just dreams, they're messages, warnings, reminders, soul downloads. Scorpio doesn't just dream, they remember, they visit, they receive. Because in the hours when the body rests, the Scorpio soul wakes up. You might think that's poetic, but ask any Scorpio and they'll tell you, I saw it before it happened. That dream, it haunted me. I woke up knowing something was coming. These aren't metaphors, they're cosmic codes delivered through symbols, emotions, and timelines that bend reality. Let me share the story of a Scorpio named Kira. For 3 nights in a row, she dreamt of a white owl circling her childhood home. No danger, no words, just the owl, watching. She didn't think much of it, until the 4th day when she got a call that her estranged father was sick, terminal, and she was the only one he asked to see. She hadn't spoken to him in 12 years. But when she walked into that hospital room, she wasn't angry, she wasn't shocked, she was prepared, because the owl was never random. It was a spiritual messenger, a symbol of endings and soul reconciliation. The dream had activated her forgiveness before her mind had time to catch up. That's what dreams do to Scorpio. They ready them, they guide them, even when logic fails. Why this code belongs to Scorpio? Because Scorpio's emotional depth reaches beyond this realm. While other signs dream in fragments, Scorpio dreams in dimensions. Their dreams aren't passive, they're alive. Scorpio may receive visits from people long gone, conversations with their younger or older self, symbols they don't understand now but later prove prophetic, emotions they didn't know they buried now brought to light. And here's the key: Scorpio remembers what others forget. Because it's not just imagination, it's interdimensional insight. Life lesson from this code: pay attention to what visits you in your sleep, especially if you're Scorpio. Because your dreams are not just processing reality, they're preparing you for it, or healing you from it, or warning you of it. So write them down, ask what they mean, let them guide you, because your soul knows how to speak through symbols. And Scorpio, never doubt the dream. It's already seen what your eyes are not ready to witness. Cosmic Code 9, the invisible cord. When Scorpio feels you from a distance, have you ever thought about someone and then they called you, or felt a sudden wave of sadness only to find out someone close to you was hurting? That's not coincidence, that's energetic tethering. And Scorpio was born fluent in this code. Scorpio doesn't need to be in the same room with you to know something's wrong. They don't need a text, a voice, or a physical presence. Because when they've connected with you even once, there is a cord, invisible, energetic, unbreakable until severed with soul-level intention. Scorpio feels you, even when you don't feel yourself. This isn't romantic fantasy, it's empathic truth magnified by Scorpio's natural magnetism and psychic frequency. Here's what most people don't understand. When Scorpio forms a bond, it's never surface level, it's soul level. And once that link is formed, they begin to mirror your emotional shifts from afar. You may think you're hiding it, but Scorpio is already carrying it with you. Let me share something personal. A Scorpio man once told me he woke up at 3 a.m. with no explanation, anxiety racing, heart pounding. He hadn't spoken to his ex in almost a year, but something in his gut said, "She's not okay." Later that day, he found out she'd been in a car accident at exactly 3:07 a.m. No one else felt it, but he did. Why? Because their connection had never truly broken, and Scorpio doesn't just move on, they carry the energetic imprint long after others forget. Why Scorpio owns this code? Because Scorpio's energy is fixed not just astrologically, but spiritually. They anchor. When they bond, they bind. Not to control, not to cling, but because their soul recognizes something deeper, a karmic thread, a soul contract, a spiritual echo. That's why Scorpio is so selective. Why they pull away when the connection isn't mutual. Because once they connect, they're in fully. And feeling someone who doesn't feel them back, that's torment. Life lesson from this code: don't underestimate soul connection, especially if you're Scorpio. When you feel something you can't explain, when someone enters your mind for no reason, when your body responds before your logic does listen. Scorpio, you were given this gift not to chase, but to protect. To know when a soul you loved is crying out in silence. To know when your energy needs to withdraw. To know when it's not paranoia, it's truth. So honor that invisible cord, but never let it strangle your evolution. Cosmic Code 10. The Messenger. When Scorpio becomes the vessel of truth after the fire. Some people search for the light. Scorpio. They become it. But only after they've walked through the fire. Most signs seek to avoid the pain, but Scorpio. They dive into it. They make a home in the wound. not because they enjoy suffering, but because their soul came here with a mission to enter the shadow, to burn down the false, to survive what would break others and then return, not empty-handed but with wisdom. That's the 10th cosmic code. The Scorpio soul is not only forged in darkness, it is sent back from it with messages the world needs. This is what makes Scorpio so powerful and so misunderstood. They don't preach from books. They don't speak in cliches. They speak in scars, in silences, in spiritual authority earned the hard way. They are the ones who hold space for someone else's pain, recognize trauma others try to hide, deliver brutal truth when no one else dares, guide others toward healing because they've lived it. Scorpio is not the guru. They're the witness, the survivor, the alchemist. They don't teach from theory. They teach from having died and come back. Let me tell you about one of the most powerful Scorpio women I've ever met. She was abandoned at 15. Raised herself, endured betrayal after betrayal, lovers, friends, family. She was silent for years. No one knew her story. Until one day, she started posting anonymous letters online, letters that read like poetry, but bled like truth. Within months, thousands followed her. Her words reached souls in silence. Why? Because she wasn't writing from imagination. She was writing from resurrection, and when she finally revealed her name, people weren't surprised. They said, "Of course she's a Scorpio." Why this code completes the Scorpio cycle? Because Scorpio is the only sign that rules both death and rebirth. They are not meant to stay in pain forever. They are meant to transcend it and then become the healer. This is the final transformation, the Phoenix stage. When Scorpio no longer just feels deeply but awakens others through their very presence. People cry around them for no reason. They confess. They change. Because Scorpio carries truth that shakes illusions. Life lesson from this code: you didn't go through what you did just to survive. You went through it to return with medicine. Scorpio, your pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You are the torchbearer, the shadow walker, the soul whisperer. So speak, write, create, guide. Because your journey was never just for you, it was to help someone else see in the dark. Final message to Scorpio viewers. You were never too intense, never too much. You were simply built to carry codes that others weren't ready for. But now they are. Now the world is listening. And you, Scorpio, you are the translator between soul and silence. The bridge between shadow and light, the truth that doesn't shake even when the world does. Welcome back, messenger. The universe always knew what it was doing when it chose you. Conclusion. Scorpio, the cosmic decoder of truth. So now you know, these weren't just gut feelings, these weren't just coincidences, they were codes. Whispers from the universe, delivered only to those brave enough to dive below the surface, to those whose souls were forged not in comfort, but in confrontation. Scorpio, you are one of the few who can walk into darkness and not get lost, because you were born in it. You don't need the light to see, you are the light. The kind of light that flickers in caves, burns in silence, and guides others home without saying a word. You've felt things that others couldn't name, seen patterns they dismissed, loved deeper hurt, harder healed, slower, but risen stronger. Because each time you cracked, you found another truth inside. You weren't broken, you were decoding. And now you carry something the world desperately needs, the ability to read what's not said, to feel what's not shown, to guide others through terrain you've already survived. You are the spiritual detective, the emotional surgeon, the soul whisperer. Not everyone will understand you. They're not supposed to. But for those who do, you will awaken them, protect them, and transform them forever. Life lesson for the viewer. You don't have to be Scorpio to honor this journey, but if you are, know that your depth isn't a curse, it's a contract. a soul agreement to hold space for truth in a world addicted to masks, a mission to see what others avoid, to become what others need even when they don't realize it yet. If this video spoke to something ancient inside you, if you've always felt different, like your truth was buried too deep for words, then you are not alone. Share in the comments. Which cosmic code have you carried in silence? Which truth did this awaken in you? And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Path to Buddhist Wisdom, not just for more content, but because this is where the deep ones gather, where silence is sacred, where transformation is real, where your soul isn't too much, it's exactly what the universe needs.